Human enhancement could be described as a usage of medicine, surgery, and other kinds of medical technology, not just to cure or control illnesses, but rather to enhance or improve human capacities and characteristics. One of the well-known and the most contradictory definition of enhancement is a direct use of biotechnical power through direct intervention in order to alter the normal functions of human body and psyche, not disease processes, and to increase or improve innate capacities and performance on the body. So I will remind you also on the one classification which is well known, and that's our three ideological and theoretical trends. First one is transhumanist, which are strong advocates of human enhancement. So they claim that we not only can we enhance, we should enhance. They not share the view that enhancement and therapy differ significantly. According to Savulescu, for instance, enhancement means helping healthy people to live a longer and or better life than it's normally expected. By enhancing, the author refers to the biological enhancement exclusively, with special focus on the genetic one. Bioconservatives accept the use of biotechnology in therapeutic purpose and find it worthy of support and public funding. However, they do not have the same view on enhancements. These authors share ethical concern arising from the threats to human nature and dignity. And the third one is the in the middle approach. This stream emphasizes that the danger lies in the dialectic relationship between capitalism and medicine. The authors of this trend perceive the access to, as well as application of biotechnology as an instrument for providing a better social position in a certain society. But it is necessary to know to what extent the biomedical enhancement support or clashes with the social accepted activities such as attending trainings, courses, languages, or music lessons, talent building, immunization, education in general, etc. Regarding this question, we needed to explore some epistemological and social implication of main pro and con arguments. I would here like to claim that despite of their theoretical opposition, these approaches encounter the same epistemological problems. In order to show the social and epistemological implication of current enhancement debate, I'm going to discuss the three following arguments it faces. First one issue is the problem of irrationality of the so-called Yak argument. So here I don't have quotation; they are in my paper. You can see that. So but you can recognize some of the claims. If you lack rationality, persuasive reason to find existence of biotechnology intervention wrongful, we should not translate business into moral condemnation. Using the Yak factor, we make only an appeal to custom and law to feel a considerable unease reflected in custom and law. And then I will try to make one relation between normal functioning and the Yak argument. So health improvement and health illness can be seen as departures from normal function or departures from species typical function. More further, chemical or genetic enhancement go beyond species typical function. But immunization is also a kind of health change which go beyond species typical functioning. So we may conclude the difference between moral justification of the mechanical or traditional natural enhancement or vaccination, like example, and chemical or genetic enhancement is the irrationality of the Yak factor. But we can also ask yourself, is the previous conclusion true? So auto-immunization is a sort of health improvement and one of the most valuable social goals, especially in the domain of child and youth social and healthcare, it cannot be forget that not all vaccinations are risk-free and morally acceptable. There is the case of H1N1 or smallpox vaccine in USA, rejection of smallpox vaccine in USA in 2003. But more risky procedure or genetic and chemical enhancement make the previous comment more relevant. Genetic or chemical means are still cognitively unexplored, health risk and ethical questionable. So we could now also conclude that this kind of irrationality is a part of a normal human function. At the same time, the normal human function term appears as a valid argument in this kind of epistemological explanation. I try to explain my idea on one example. That example is part of the Agar's vision of liberal eugenics. So human cloning we can define as the usage of human somatic cell nuclear transfer technology to produce a human embryo. Fertilization with a copy of cloned genius can provide geniality or superiority of our offspring. But here is objection that human cloning and genetic engineering in general are wrong because they violate some deep sense of what is right or wrong, what is right for us. But answer on this objection can be that Yak argument is designed, so our previous argument is designed for reaction of disgust that lack an obvious rational reason, especially in the case of cloning of human beings. I find the so-called double trouble of this example. First group of troubles are rational facts. The problem represents scientific facts about negative effects of cloning or genetic engineering. Second problem is in correlation with the first one, that kind of irrationality facts. So, but we can also ask ourselves, is that really irrational facts? So being familiar, I will claim that if being familiar with the real dangers of cloning procedure, fear and uneasy cannot be rejected because of its own irrationality, but they are part of normal and everyday human judgment. Here are some of the rational facts. So first one is that fetus or clone develops faster than the naturally fertilized fetus. Then success in cloning a sheep does not guarantee a success in cloning other organisms. DNA copying error could be more expressive for someone whose genome comes from the somatic cell of older man or woman, and then clone organism does not inherit all its DNA from its progenitor. Small amount of mitochondrial DNA is transmitted to it by the enucleate egg. And the mitochondrial DNA codes for a number of metabolic proteins and is passed down exclusively through the female of the species. So perfectly cloned genius from Eger's idea of liberal eugenics, whose role is crucial in fertilization or replication of a perfect baby, could be created from the same genius, which at the same time must be a woman. In that way, reproductive cloning would not exist. Hence, we should speak about infinitive process of self-reproduction of extraordinary persons, exclusively women. So cloned embryo must have the same progenitor and donor of the egg. The biggest factor of unpredictability comes from the effects that environment has on the development of an organism with the same genetic base. Now, irrational facts. That's a question. Is the Yak factor unacceptable because of its own irrationality? Could be that the Yak factor is a pure product of healthy brain, social and cultural context. We all know that amygdala's function is a part of typical human functioning. The amygdala's role is not limited on making judgment about basic emotions like fear, anger, disgust, and sadness. but includes a role in making social judgments. Then, by healthy aging, atrophy of amygdala's volume is in the order of 2 till 20%. Atrophy alternation are playing a role in decision making, whereby it is less important role of emotional, irrational influence. And then, least but not least, this problem of cultural relativism. That's a problem that we cannot, we don't have a universal measure of irrational or rational decision. So, this is problem one conclusion. Considering real and possible medical and social consequences of described alternation, on one hand, and protectoral function of fear when a person is faced with certain risk or unpleasant intervention. On the other hand, we do not find enough arguments that fear or disgust could be rejected as non-scientific or irrational reaction of humans. At the same time, term of normal human function could be used as the epistemological base of similar account. And this is also important for me as sociologist. So socio-anthropological analysis of the concept of pollution and taboo suggests that disgust is having a great influence on social organization of communities. Second issue, sociology of enhancement. That's the problem with the bioconservative idea that unequal access to biotechnology leads to a genetically divided society, two classes, natural and gene-rich. On the other hand, there is an idea of innovation and diffusion. That idea is for Nick Hager also. So he's claimed that innovation of enhancement technology tends toward a greater polarization of society, but the process of diffusion of these technologies points in the opposite direction, promoting their spreading. This problem is, I call bioclass reductionism. Presumably in context of competitive character of a developed society, analysis of social mobility could suppose that socio-economically stronger groups should be directly classified as a potential genetically superior classes. Those who do not have enough socio-economical power by staying in a natural condition will be gone lower on social scale. But seen through the optic of sociological imagination, this assumption is at least questionable. In following slides, I try to explain how I see the process of the birth of the genetic elite. So suppose that group with better structural position has power to put upon new social and medical norms. The same group has power to finance and create new techniques and technologies which provide a certain biotechnological power. But biotech power is not yet genetic superiority of class that creates such a power. For capitalization of biotech power, it is necessary to exist a group of people who are educated for usage of biotechnology, class of specialists who try to capture his own share. There are also a group of socio-economically lower classes who represent potential experimental group or patients whose safety is compromised, although the patients may be the last one to know. Last but not least is the group who should justify or not justify such intervention, the class of bioethicists. And now I try to give some social dynamic of this constellation. So I paraphrase Foucault's so-called social-medical dynamic for birth of the clinic. So I will claim that in a regime of free market economy, the clinic finds a way to a group of rich men who are willing to invest in medical researchers. The clinic established gradually pay off of the other contractor side. It is for pooper interest paid for clinical capitalization which rich men approved, interest which must be understood in its every aspect, because it is a matter of compensation as a part of objective science interest and rich men life interest. So what is today's structure of enhancement society? Today already exist the big biomedical magnates like Geron, PPL Therapeutics, and so on, who possess biotech resources. Stratum of specialists who, because of their professional skills, have particular social position. After all, they are ambivalent structures, interclasses, who are not yet gene-rich nor naturals. For example, transgenetic organism created for xenotransplantation, babies with DNA from two mothers, then children with surgery created anatomical traits, and so on. Completely genetic engineered organism would represent transition from ambivalent to unambiguous class of genetic enhancement. But now we come to the claim that about innovation and diffusion. So I think that only through dialectic relation of socio-technology process with all the transition stratum, it is possible to realize transition from economical to genome pita. I call it genome pita. But I ask myself, is this dynamic consistent with the idea of technological diffusion on lower social layers? I think that this process is rather expansion of biomedical effects toward experimentation phase, while real advantage stay in higher circles gradually from economical compensation for specialists, objective interest for science, to final and accident-free genetic enhancement for sponsors of enhancement. So, described process is provided with the help of cultural complicity, including special role of class of bioethicists, in which whole community participate by spotting of partial interest framed with possession of social power. It is obvious that so-called diffusion cannot be assumed as a type of cultural diffusion, but rather as a cultural technological hegemony. And third issue is view of enhancement as intrinsic good, or I call that vulgarization of Weberianism. I will remind on the idea of self-fulfillment of Protestant ethic, Weber's classical book Protestant ethic. Yes. If we are not aggressively pursuing prosperity and happiness with the fervor urged by our founding fathers, then we are letting ourselves down and squandering our time on earth. This could give a certain feeling to Americans that prosperity as well as happiness is an intrinsic good. It would not be a surprise if many of us start to feel as our duty to use any means possible to fulfill it, including taking drugs like Prozac. Then we get some what I call empirical arbitrability. That's first so-called problem. Cognitive enhancement in context of Weber's Protestant ethics of American society could be seen as intrinsic good. This claim depends on something what we could call a different life project. Some enhancement can be intrinsic good in one moment, but also a positional good in next one. And then we came to another problem, that's consistence of biotech and spirituality. The concept of self-fulfillment occurs as one of the most important bases of Protestant ethics, seen through the asceticism and compulsive saving in greater glory of God. Weber's model of intrinsic good is at the very end motivated with religion's idea of predestination. Predestination is a core of pilgrim intrinsic good. But chemical enhancement is freed every pilgrim spiritualism. So we can ask, could cognitive enhancement be an intrinsic good? There is something else, that mixing utility and functionality. Pilgrim spiritualism, seeing as asceticism and saving the believing in predestination, was needed for building of certain socio-economical system. Same spiritualism as an intrinsic good was functional in moral and social justification of this type of social production. If in high development society pilgrim asceticism is needless, then we cannot compare his inner function with function of chemical enhancement in biotech epoch. And then we can conclude that ethical and social concern of biotech usage expressed throughout Weber's model is in fact negation of asceticism. Aggressively pursuing prosperity and happiness with the help of biotech means excluded long and patient socialization, vocation, solidarity, labor, and abandonment in spirit of Weber, calling, and more generally Protestant ethic. And if we can, I think that we have another couple minutes. I will resume of particular conclusions here. First challenge had two phases. We have showed some real and possible dangers of cloning or genetic engineering. Regarding these facts, the structure of human behavior based on fear or disgust was described. Or we can say the structure of human mechanism of rejection. It is also underlined that some health preventive procedure like vaccine, in spite of wide cultural acceptance of immunization practice, thanks to the same connection between fear or uneasy feeling on the one hand and cognition and moral disgust on the other hand, can be rejected, like in case of cold grip or smallpox vaccine in USA. Then normal human function in cases of uneasy, fear, or disgust, in certain cases can implicate rejection, although the procedure is culturally legitimized. It is more difficult with procedures which are cognitively poor, technically imperfect, and at the same time cannot be socially and ethically accepted. Second issue emphasizes all the troubles of bioclass dichotomy. It is so obvious but easily postponed that the process of transition of socio-economical to genetic power is neither coherent nor express. Transition of socio-economical to genetic class requires and results in more than two social layers. Social and biological ambivalence of new created stratums could be long-lasting, arising of social and moral concerns, not only for their arising social and moral concerns not only for class of naturals, but more dangerous concerns of vanishing manners of the ambivalent classes. Presumably, the Yak argument could be used in justifying of vanishing unclean and ambivalent structures. And another findings is that very fast and efficient change of individual genetic structure is unproportional with the social mobility, because of existence of described biological and social stratums and possible social and moral distance among them, of course. This slow and long-lasting process of wide ethical and social acceptance of genetic engineering provides a better social position of gene-rich people. There is no process of technical and social diffusion, but rather cultural and technical hegemony. Third challenge is showing a distortion of Weber's idea or theoretical model, a kind of oxymoron, the instrumentalization of spiritualism. Real damage coming out of this epistemological distortion is overlooking one of the most complex problems of Weber mental imaginary, that's his alienation. In Weber's terms, it's trapping human beings in socio-economic structure of their own making, men trapped in shell as hard as steel. In context of the described transition from socio-economic to biological power, we are faced with meta-alienation, abandonment of our own biology, as well as locking in much more dangerous and isolated type of shell. Presented moral beliefs are based, I think, on a sort of consistency and coherency, but we have shown that instead of coherency, it is more appropriate to speak about a kind of contingency. Thank you.